This is the first night that we will be joining for the next 16, 17 days. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Rua Swennerfeld. I'm one of the organizers. I live in Charlotte, Vermont. We have a transition initiative. And tonight I have the privilege of introducing Pam and Natasha, who are going to help us begin this whole time with a prayerful offering. Pam is a member of the Wintu tribe, and he's the son of the current tribal chief, Killeen Sisk. And Natasha is a mother, filmmaker, and teacher of nature practice. She directed her latest film, One Word Sawamem, with Pam. And you can stream that video all during the summit in your home. And you could also see it at a workshop on Wednesday, September 29th, and meet Pam and Natasha. So welcome everyone. This is a really exciting time. And over to you, Pam and Natasha.
Hello, I'm glad to be here. My Indian name is Pom Pahatot. My English name is Michael Preston, and I'm coming from the Wintu tribe. I'm an enrolled member as well as from the Susanville Indian Rancheria on my dad's side. I'm part Pit River, Modoc, and also Paiute. However, I was raised from my mom's people from the Wintu people of Mount Shasta region and the McLeod River watershed, being the Winnemem band of Wintu people. So I'm grateful to be here, and I would like to let Natasha introduce herself as well, and we'll continue from there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natasha. I come from Caracas, Venezuela. I am joining you right now from Coast Miwok land in what is now known as the Northern San Francisco Bay Area. And it's really my honor and privilege to share this time with you here and open this important gathering in a prayerful way, offering especially our support today to our Indigenous brothers and sisters, to them for holding humanity's most intimate knowledge of how to live in good relationship with the earth, and to kind of reaffirm our commitment to stand with Indigenous wisdom keepers so that we may come into a better balance with the natural world and with the earth at these times.
Thank you, Natasha. We will, I wanted to start this off. I wanted to first of all say thank you. Grateful to be here. Thank you for everyone to come. We are in alignment with this movement that you all have got going on here with this conference, and we wanted to uplift that and uplift the movers and shakers around this United States and beyond, and everybody that's all for the land and for people of going back to the sacred way of life in alignment with the waters and the fires and the winds and the earth and the sacred places around the world, not just here in the United States, but around the world. And we wanted to give our offerings up in regards to this. And I wanted to a traditional opening for how we do things about where I come from. That's all I know how to do really, is but do things about where, well, from the Wintu way of life. That's where I was raised at and grew up in. And I wanted to offer up a few prayer ceremonial songs that we sing in order to help the people here to do the right thing, say the right things, make the right moves that need to be made in regard to the land alignment, in regards to the river systems, regards to the salmon, the mountains, all the fires, all the volcanoes, all the ocean ways, all the creeks, all the sacred lakes, all the animals, endangered species, everything that is part of the laws of creation. This is what we sing our songs for on behalf of. Some of our best offerings and prayers are through songs or chants, as they call them. So I'm gonna go into that phase at this moment. And I'm grateful to be here for this at this time. I feel like this is what we're supposed to be doing right now. And where I'm coming from, this is what we're supposed to be doing. Fires are all around us at the moment. Thank you for having us here. We are honored to be a part of this circle. We are ready for the movement that y'all want to move in regards to the sacred. I'm from Mount Shasta, California. I live in Redding, California. Reach out to us. We'll be around. We'll be around doing this work that we can, that we are tasked with as for my generation and beyond. We are still here for it, and we will be passing this on from the natives from California. Thank you on behalf of my people from the Winnemem Wintu tribe as a representative from those people, my lineage, from Florence Jones, my mom, Kelly Sisk. Much love. May this conference be uplifting. May this conference be of the light and of the insights. May you all feel that fire and the water and that balancedness of it. Thank you all for sharing your ideas with us. We look forward to this next few days and weeks. Oh, thank you so much. Ichalabeskin.
Well, thank you so much, Palm. I think you can see all the love you're getting in the chat from everybody. We're really particularly honored to have you here with us on this difficult day, and really thank you for that beautiful, soulful opening. All right, so yeah, welcome everybody. Now I think we're really here. Maybe take just a moment, if you haven't yet, and switch to gallery view and just look at all the beautiful faces that are here, about 150 strong for this opening ceremony. Just take that in for a moment. All these folks that had a million other things that they could have done this evening, but chose to be here because you believe in what we're doing here. Great. So yeah, thank you for being here. My name is Don Hall. I'm the Executive Director of Transition US, one of the main organizers of this summit. Before I introduce our main speaker for this evening, Transition Movement founder Rob Hopkins, I've been asked to say a few words about what is regeneration and why have we made this the main focus of this summit. And I actually posted the same question to our Regenerative Communities portal, kind of our social network for this summit, about a week ago, and received a couple dozen amazing responses already. And so I wanted to share a few with you here. We had one person who gave an excellent general definition of regeneration as a process to regrow, rebirth, or begin again. We had folks that focus more specifically on restoring biodiversity, soil health, community health, and well-being. Replenishing our aquifers, and redesigning our economic system from the ground up. And still others that pointed to principles or qualities of regeneration, such as reciprocity, gratitude, and inspiration. So I think these quotes do a nice job of kind of summing up the whole range of meanings that are packed into this term of regeneration. I have to admit for myself that I was initially a regeneration skeptic. I remember being at the 2013 Florida Permaculture Convergence when a good friend of mine, a former Transition US board member, Mario Yanez, suggested to me that this term regeneration might actually be the thing to bring together closely related movements for permaculture, for transition, for a solidarity economy, for local and regional food systems and climate justice, into a kind of coherent movement where we can connect the dots and amplify our collective power. And at that time, I think I thought that the term regeneration was a little too obscure, maybe a little too West Coast at that time to be the kind of big banner over all of this. But as we know, a lot has changed in the 8 years since. The climate crisis has intensified and accelerated, impacting many of us right where we live. Calls for radical systemic change have grown louder, but so has disinformation and hate. And we're currently living through the fourth wave of a pandemic that, despite all our best science and technology, we still haven't been able to get under control. So I think there's a desperate, urgent need to be able to break through all of this noise, all of this disconnection, the apathy and despair, and to point a new direction forward, and to give people a sense of credible hope for the future. This is very similar to something that Daniel Christian Wall wrote in his 2016 book, Designing Regenerative Cultures. He said that we need a collective narrative about who we are and why we are worth sustaining. A shared story powerful enough to keep all of us innovative, creative, and collaborative as we question into the what, how, when, and where. And Daniel will be one of our panelists for the Regenerative Communities Plenary tomorrow. So I think two of the clearest examples of the power of regeneration and why humanity is worth saving are regenerative agriculture and ecosystem restoration. Regenerative agriculture rooted in indigenous practices shifts the paradigm away from conventional farming, even organic conventional farming, that can be hugely environmentally destructive and disconnected from nature, to a way of farming with nature that builds soil, sequesters carbon, and enhances biodiversity year after year, while still providing abundantly for human needs. And perhaps even more encouraging is the work of large-scale ecosystem restoration. What you see here is the amazing transformation of the Loess Plateau in China, which I first learned about from activist and documentary filmmaker John Liu, who has since gone on to catalyze dozens of ecosystem restoration camps throughout this country and around the world. And you can hear more about this at our workshop on eco-restoration on October 6th. Interestingly, just earlier this week, Paul Hawken, maybe one of the most famous environmentalists in this country, released his new book, and it's entirely focused on regeneration as the vehicle for ending the climate crisis in one generation. And in that book, which I just received my copy, Paul says that the climate crisis is not a science problem. It is a human problem. The ultimate power to change the world does not reside in technologies. It relies on reverence, respect, and compassion for ourselves, for all people, and for all life. But our new focus at Transition US on regeneration didn't come from my own personal revelations. Rather, it came out of a strategic planning process that we've been engaged in with our national network for about 2 years now. During that time, we surveyed and interviewed over 70 movement leaders and held national network strategy conversations with hundreds of key stakeholders from throughout the country. And one thing that kept coming up again and again in the feedback was a shift from resilience to regeneration as the guide star for our movement. And I think this quote from one of our survey respondents sums it up very nicely. They said, "The word regenerative is gaining momentum, and for very good reason. Inside this new and rapidly growing cultural movement contains an entire diverse ecosystem of thought about how to better understand the damaging, interconnected consequences of modern civilization, how and why things evolved this way, and how to move forward, consciously stewarding our culture's evolution to transition as effectively and rapidly as possible to healthy, holistic, integrated, resilient life support systems. Transition already fits perfectly inside this ecosystem, this movement of movements." Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think after going on this whole journey myself, that regeneration actually better describes what we've been trying to do in the transition movement all along, perhaps better than resilience or sustainability. Well, it still points to the fact that we need to make urgent, rapid transition. It also affirms our belief that a better world is still possible, that we can really do this, and that this work is essentially fundamentally joyful. So that's the spirit in which we're offering this summit. We're offering it as a powerful opportunity to reemerge after 18 months of social distancing, to recharge ourselves and reconnect with each other, and ultimately to regenerate the world at this extremely pivotal time. So I'm really thrilled to be with you all on this journey from what is to what if to what's next. And it is my great pleasure now to introduce Transition Movement founder Rob Hopkins, who is staying up very late with us tonight, zooming in from Belgium, where he's doing some speaking engagements. And Rob is the co-founder of Transition Town Totnes and the Transition Network, the author of the Transition Handbook, the Transition Companion, The Power of Just Doing Stuff, 21 Stories of Transition, and most recently, From What Is to What If, Unleashing the Power of Imagination to Create the Future We Want. He presents the podcast series, From What If to What's Next, which invites listeners to send in their what if questions and then explores how to make them a reality. Wonderful podcast if you haven't checked it out already. In 2012, he was voted one of the Independent's top 100 environmentalists and was on the Nesta and the Observer's list of Britain's 50 New Radicals. Hopkins has also appeared on BBC Radio 4's Forethought and A Good Read in the French film phenomenon Demain and its sequel Après Demain, and has spoken at TED Global and 3 TEDx events. An Ashoka Fellow, Hopkins also holds a doctorate degree from the University of Plymouth and has received 2 honorary doctorates. He's a keen gardener, a founder of New Lion Brewery in Totnes, and a director of the Totnes Community Development Society, the group behind Atmos Totnes, an ambitious community-led development project. He blogs at transitionnetwork.org and at robhopkins.net and tweets at Rob in Transition. So with that, I will pass the mic to Rob.
Hey everybody, so lovely to see you all. Greetings from Belgium. This is quite possibly the latest talk I've ever given. It's 20 to 3 in the morning here. So I'm going to be kept awake by this large glass of water. And it's really lovely. Thank you so much, Pom, for that introduction. That was really very, very special. And I guess what I want to bring to the conversation today is, and you framed it so beautifully there, Don, about the importance of thinking about regeneration and regenerative practices. And I guess I want to bring the question about how do we regenerate our imagination, our collective imagination, and our ability to see things as if they could be otherwise. And I'm just going to share my screen because I want to share some pictures with you. Come on, there we go. Is that going to work? Yes. So as I said, I'm in Brussels in Belgium, and I had a real treat this morning. I went to go and visit a guy called Luc Schuten, who is a Belgian artist who draws the future. He's an architect. In his spare time, he draws what he imagines 2100 could be like, and kind of imagines buildings built with materials that don't kind of even exist yet. You know, if we could build buildings made of mushrooms, if we could build buildings using all sorts of different stuff, this sort of fantastical, really rather beautiful idea of sort of a future where our towns and cities are built using mimicry and so on. So we went round to visit his house, and he's been doing this since the mid-60s. He showed us around, and it was a real lovely insight into the world of someone who is really, really imaginative. This is his bath in his house. He has a wooden bath in his house. And when he turns the water on, it runs around the little channel you see running around there and then into the bath. And the whole thing is designed and shaped. So it's just the right shape for him and his wife to lie next to each other, tip to toe to tail, whatever you say. And he said, that's where we have all of our best conversations. Beautiful. And then he took us down into the basement, which was like going into the Batcave in the earlier generation of Batman films and TV programs, where he introduced us to the way that he gets around the streets of Brussels in this electric pedal-powered car. And he said, one of the problems with having something like this is no one can hear you coming because it's completely silent. So the horn on his car isn't a beeping noise. It's very loud samples of horses neighing or chickens or old-fashioned trains. It was very, very funny. And then in his garden, this, which is a chair where he meditates. He has a thing that he puts on his head, which I don't know quite how it works. He said it recorded the kind of brain waves coming out of his head. And when they get to a certain kind of level that you can get to when you meditate, then the chair rises up in the tree up to the top. When he's sitting at the top of the tree and he's surrounded by all the leaves of the trees and he's looking out over the city, he said, that's where I get my best ideas, in a kind of meditative state up in the top of a tree, looking out over the city. So it was a magical couple of hours with him. And one of the reasons I really want to talk to you about that is that actually about a month ago, less than 20, 30 miles away from where his house is. So yeah, this is some of the kind of work that he does when he kind of gets into that sort of state. Just beautiful. About 20, 30 miles away from where we had that conversation a few weeks ago, there were some of the worst floods in the history of Belgium. And just over the border into Germany as well. I had a friend of mine who was flooded out of her house, and many people, a lot of trauma in Belgium at the moment about the floods that have happened. And, you know, I guess just to put everything that we're talking about, that I'm going to talk about in the context, this is a climate and emergency. And, you know, we have governments who, as COP26 approaches, keep saying, yes, we're going to go for net zero by 2050. And as Peter Kalmus put it earlier this week, there's only two problems with net zero by 2050. The first bit is the net zero bit, the second bit is the 2050 bit, both of which are really about just pushing everything out. You know, it's not like, you know, if you're at work, your health and safety policy at work isn't, if you smell smoke, ring the fire brigade next week. You know, we have to act as if this is an emergency in everything that we do. And one of the things that I see when I visit transition groups in many different places, when I did the research for From What Is to What If, was really having a very strong realization I'd not really thought about before, that the imagination loves limits. The human imagination thrives when it has limits put around. When Dr. Seuss wrote Green Eggs and Ham, he wrote it because he was challenged by his publisher to write a book that just used 50 words, and said afterwards it was the best exercise that his imagination ever had. Any of those of you who've studied improv theatre will know you get given a scenario, you improvise within that. And the climate and ecological emergency, the people I meet who really understand it and who are motivated to do something about it are so much more imaginative than the people who somehow imagine this isn't real and it's all just magically to go away. The challenge that we have, I think, that we're living in a time where our collective imagination is under a huge amount of pressure, what Henry Giroux calls the disimagination machine. Or as Mariame Kaba, the great prison abolitionist, says, we live in a system that has been locked into a false sense of inevitability. And there was this research published in 2010 that suggested that IQ and imagination rose together till the mid-90s, at which point imagination began to decline while IQ continued to rise, and it's been declining ever since. And one of the best books I've read recently, and I'm halfway through at the moment, is this Freedom Dreams, The Black Radical Imagination by Robin R.G. Kelly. I just want to read you a little paragraph from this because I think it sums it up beautifully. He said, sometimes I think the conditions of daily life, of everyday oppressions, of survival, not to mention the temporal pleasures accessible to most of us, render much of our imagination inert. We are constantly putting out fires, responding to emergencies, finding temporary refuge, all of which make it difficult to see anything other than the present. As the great poet Keorapetse Tsogyile put it, when the clouds clear, we shall know the color of the sky. When movements have been unable to clear the clouds, it has been the poets, no matter the medium, who have succeeded in imagining the color of the sky, in rendering the kinds of dreams and futures social movements are capable of producing. Knowing the color of the sky is far more important than counting clouds. Or to put it another way, the most radical art is not protest art, but works that take us to another place, envision a different way of seeing, perhaps a different way of feeling. So I worry that as a society, as a civilization, we may end up with an epitaph that just says, really? It wasn't that hard. You know, what, really? You couldn't imagine a way of having a society in which people could thrive, more equal, more just, more beautiful, more nourishing, more delicious, more regenerative. Really, you couldn't figure that out? You know, and the work that I do increasingly focuses on the idea of longing, which to me is fundamental to regeneration of the imagination. How do we cultivate longing in the world around us, in the communities where we live, in our families, in our society, for a low carbon, or equal, just future? Because if we can't cultivate longing, it's not going to happen. So this is a guy called James Mackay, whose work I love, who draws the future. He goes out into the cities where he lives. He doesn't put it as far out as Luke does. This is like, you know, in the next 10, 15 years, if we now could cultivate the longing to maximize the biodiversity of the towns and cities where we live, what might they look like in 10 years? Well, they might look like this. And actually, once you can imagine this, well, what might that smell like? What would it sound like to walk to work through a city that had done this work? Because once you cultivating the longing is the difficult bit. Actually making this happen is really pretty straightforward. But cultivating the longing is the work of imagination and poetry and art and dreaming. This is his idea of, as we take cars out of our cities, which is happening in more and more places, space, what we're going to do with that space. We could fill it with gardens like this. Our children walk to school through streets like this. This is entirely possible. But like, as Walida Imarisha says, you cannot build what you cannot imagine. You have to create the space in a society to imagine this. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. And one of the problems is the world that we live in, we get locked into imagining that it's always going to be like that because that's all we've ever seen. This is Fleet Street in London, and an amazing project called London National Park City created this beautiful little animation. So normally we see this, we assume it's always going to be like this, but maybe, just maybe, it could end up like this. I think once you see Fleet Street like that, it's really hard to unsee it. And what I love then is thinking, okay, if that's what that street looks like, what do all the other streets around it look like? And actually, what's it like to live in a city that actually feels more like some buildings in a forest than a city with a few trees? How does that change mental health provision in the city? How does it change what work people do? You know, it runs on many different levels. You might be thinking, well, that's very nice, Rob, you know, but in the real world, that sort of thing doesn't happen. This is in Barcelona, where the municipality have just announced they're going to shut 30% of all the streets in the center of the city and turn them into forests. Into places for play and community and people to come together, to keep people cool as it gets warmer in Barcelona. And this is a photo somebody sent me recently of a street in Amsterdam. This is what that street looked like in 2015. This is what that street looks like today. You know, this sort of changes can happen really, really quickly and are really accelerating. And I think once you, and it's something I see in so many transition groups, you start something and it changes a bit, and then that expands your imagination and sense of what's possible. We take steps into the imagination. We don't leap straight in necessarily, but everything that we do expands our sense of what might be possible in terms of next steps. I wanted to show you a little animation, which means I just need to stop sharing and then share again, because I need to click it so that you can hear the sound and you can see the video. This is a little video that I made. As Don said, I do a podcast called From What If to What Next. In the first 10 episodes, we do an exercise at the beginning of every episode where the guests are invited to close their eyes, imagine they travel to 2030, not utopia or paradise, not like climate change has disappeared, but it's to a 2030 that's the result of everything that could possibly have been done between now and then being done. So it felt like living through a massively transformative time. So we actually became a zero carbon nation, not a net zero carbon nation. We actually got to being a zero carbon nation by 2030. What would that be like? So this is some of those cut together. I then worked with some amazing animators, and this is a little 3-minute little immersion in that, and I hope you enjoy it.
We're going to be using re in our language. We're going to be rebuilding, refurbishing, remaking, reusing, recreating, reinventing. The re is going to be a big part of our language.
Police and prisons and the armed forces were massively defunded, and that money has gone into robust preventative health care and well-being programs that also contribute to a rich imagination.
Financial insecurity has been eradicated. People no longer go to work because they have no choice.
And so all these workspaces that used to be occupied by big banks are now, of course, being redirected and used for creative spaces of all sorts, you know, whether it's technical or artistry.
If you see girlfriends meet each other, they won't say, oh, you got this new dress, but they will say, oh, you got the same dress that you wore last week, but now you've made a little change about it. And that's so fancy and that's so fashionable.
The city really changed since the Ministry of Imagination was born. The city has become a huge laboratory in which everyone can participate.
You can hear laughter, not just the laughter of children, but the laughter of adults.
The place is alive with activity. There's people everywhere doing things.
People can walk freely in their bodies, regardless of their shape, their size, their abilities, their gender expressions, the color of their skin, their age, and there's an embrace of that.
We care about the things that we have. We cherish them, we repair them, we make sure that they will last for a very long time.
Faces are beautifully lined, full of the marks of laughter and a life well lived. It smells like growing things.
The air is filled with birdsong again, and London looks more like a rich parkland or forest.
All of the city's children, whatever their social condition, can have access to quality food.
We have cities and towns with clean air, which we can smell, and smell the flowers and smell the trees. We hear the birds, we swim in the clean water in our lakes and our rivers.
We have a diversity in habitats of wildflowers and scrub and brambles and blackthorn.
Thyme and lavender, can smell ripening fruit, the cherry tree, this vibrant explosion of colours and smell and of people.
All that tameness is suddenly dispensed of as being so last year.
Access to nature has been recognized as a human right.
So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope that played okay. Yeah, I've really enjoyed making that. So I'm just sorry, I'm going to just share again, but unticking the boxes, because I did do a talk the other day where I did the whole talk and then got to the end and realized that they'd all got cut off and I hadn't been able to see because I'd been in that mode. I just sat talking to myself for 40 minutes and I don't want to. So where was it? Yeah. So this idea of a little like kind of update, I guess, on the transition movement. We recently did in Transition Network a big evaluation piece of going out to the movement and asking, where are you at, what's happening? And out of that came these characteristics, which I think are really useful of what people are doing. So engage with the need for change, co-create motivating and imaginative narratives and visions, connect and care for each other, support inner transformations, address injustice, apply living systems design, take practical actions, contribute to a well-being economy, broaden and deepen participation, and energize networks and alliances. And what I wanted to do now was, which is something that Marissa asked that if I might talk about, is a project that I'm involved in Totnes, which I don't talk about very much, because it's sort of something that I've been involved with for about 12 years. But for me, it's an example, firstly, of most of these characteristics, but also of something that is increasingly of interest to me, which is how do we build imagination infrastructure? How do we build something that allows the people around us to expand their imagination? And what does that look like? So this is a story that runs over since about 2007. I'll go through it quite quickly. Hopefully it'll give you a sense of it. So in our town is an old milk factory. It's 8 acres. It was the town's biggest employer until 2007 when it closed down. 160 people lost their jobs. It has a listed building there, an old historic building that the community then battled to save from demolition, which they managed, and the building was then protected. The community then started mobilizing to say, we want to become the developers of this site. So while it's not explicitly a Transition Town Totnes project, it has many overlaps, and some of us from Transition have been very involved in it all the way through. We started asking everybody in the town, what do you think should happen there? We did some big events to really raise the profile in the eyes of the people who owned it, to say the community should become the developer of this site. And we started to build a real groundswell. People started to call it the Atmos site, which was the name of the project, rather than the Dairy Crest site, which it was known as before. We ended up getting the company who owned it into a position where they felt they had to sit down and talk to us. This was the meeting where they decided they were going to sell us. They were going to work with us on the site, at the end of which the guy said, we are committed to working with you, partly because we have no choice. Absolutely, you have no choice. This is the future of this site. This is what's going to happen here. Then we signed an agreement with the company where we as a community would try and we would run the consultation, we'd make a master plan, we'd get a planning consent. Once we had that, then we would buy them out. This was an amazing day in 2014 where for the first time in 7 years, we opened the gate, the whole community went into the site, we read a statement as to what was going to happen, what the future of the site was going to be, and then that kicked off the consultation. So for the next 2 years, in a town of 9,000 people, we ran a consultation that over its duration drew in ideas from 4,000. It was phenomenally creative, and it really did build a kind of an imagination infrastructure. It was really gathered lots of ideas from across the community of what could happen there. It went through different rounds, and I've never been involved in a consultation for a site before, which genuinely said, anything could happen here. There's an old building, we need to protect that. Apart from that, absolutely anything can happen here. We had some members of the community who were our community ambassadors and community design team who did more work. And this is the plan that the community created out of that 2-year process. 62 homes that meet local needs for genuinely affordable housing in a town that recently declared housing emergency in a way that no other developers are doing. 37 retirement units, a hotel, 7,000 square meters of new workspace, a school for food entrepreneurs, all sorts of different things, all powered by renewable energy and all in community ownership, most importantly. So that once it's paid off the loans that are used to finance it, it actually is generating money every year for the economy, £2 or £3 million a year generated, as opposed to off to some tax somewhere. We got planning permission through a referendum that we ran in November 2016, and 86% of people in the town voted yes for it to go ahead. And then just as we were about to buy the site, the company we'd been dealing with called Dairycrest were bought by a Canadian company called Saputo, one of the biggest dairy companies in the world. And the guy who took it over then basically what happened, engineered a deal where instead of selling it to us, as we'd been working with them for 6 years, engineered something where instead he sold it to his brother-in-law, who is a kind of a small-time building guy. So the whole project basically got shut out of the site. What's been happening since then, which happened year, we found that out, is we've been campaigning really, really hard to get the site back. And we have a phenomenal campaign. We are really trying to bring a lot of pressure onto the Canadian company to say, you need to put this right. And speaking of imagination, one of the best things we've done so far was an amazing event with Brian Eno, the man who invented ambient electronic music, and who also makes these incredible light shows, self-generating paintings, who created a whole artwork on the chimney on the site. It was amazing. It was like being in an outdoor cathedral for an hour. And the moment when we projected Another World is Possible onto the chimney was genuinely gave me goosebumps. And this was at the end where we projected the face of Lino Saputo, who is the guy who runs that company, onto the roof of the building that we've been offered £2.5 million by the government to turn into the best art centre in the southwest of England, that we can't do because this is what's happened. So if anybody out there wants to get involved and help us to try and bring some pressure to bear on this company, we'd be very grateful. But for me, it's a real. The reason why I wanted to talk about this project is because many of the things that we want to do in transition to really scale up the ambition of what we're doing, to really be regenerative. You know, this would be such a massive regenerative project for this town in community ownership. This has taken a long time, thousands of hours of community input and hours. We raised £1 million to get this project this far on this really, really complicated site. And, you know, one of the things I think that is a quality that we've really cultivated is the power of stubbornness. You know, I'm a great believer that the transition movement needs to be really, really stubborn among its other characteristics, because some of the things that we need to do are really bloody hard work and take a long time, and we need to be supporting each other through doing that. I want to talk a little bit more. So if you want to find out more about that, it's atmos.totnes.org, atmos.totnes.org. And yeah, watch this space because we're going to get this site back. I just want to talk a little bit more about a few things as they relate to how we might build imagination infrastructure, how we might look at being regenerative in terms of imagination. I think one of the things is that imagination needs space. You know, Albert Einstein always said his best ideas came when he rode his bicycle in the forest. Our best ideas don't come to us when we're overwhelmed and stressed and anxious. And this is a brilliant thing that Transition Tuting did in London, where they took over an empty shop. They turned it into a transition shop. They said it was a place with lots for sale, lots on offer, but nothing for sale. And it was a place where people could come in and just have conversations. What do you love about this place? What do you long for? What do you mourn for? What do you grieve? And just to gather all of those stories up together was an incredible, powerful bit, I think, of creating space. Because if we don't make space in everyone's hectic lives in 2021, then really who does? And another thing that I was thinking about is, you know, we so often talk about positive feedbacks in the context of everything getting worse and worse and worse and worse. From a climate change perspective, one thing leads to another, and we come to think of positive feedback as always being a negative thing. One of the things that I've seen again and again is this beautiful ability that transition has to do good, positive feedback. And we should never forget it. This is in Wellington, a transition group in the southwest of England, who started with making a community garden. Went really, really well, brought lots of people together. They started to get a reputation with their local council, who said, we've got this strip of land here, it's full of weeds. Do you want to do something with it? So they mobilized people, they cleared it, they turned it into a food forest, and people loved it. Did a lot of kind of consultation with their neighbors. Because that went really well, the municipality then said to them, look, we've got 8.5 acre site here. Have you got any ideas for that? They ran the most incredible consultation. Transition Network gave them a bit of funding towards their consultation. They engaged hundreds and hundreds of people, designed an amazing scheme for this park. That consultation included putting big boards up around the town, even taking over empty shops in the high street to inform people about when the consultations were. As a result of that, the municipality, the council have now offered them a 40-acre strip that runs all around one side of the town to turn into a green corridor. You know, never imagine the projects that you start are just going to stay there. You have no idea where they're going to go, what they're going to unlock, and what that's going to bring into the conversation. This is a kind of, to help people imagine it, this is a picture an artist did of what it's going to look like. One of the things we need to remember as well is that imagination is something that is not evenly distributed through society. I think there's, in some ways, imagination is a function of privilege. If your basic needs for food and shelter and safety and security aren't met, it's really hard to live an imaginative life. I visited a project in Dundee called Art Angel, run by Rosalie Somerton here. Amazing. They work with people with mental health problems, burnout, anxiety, trauma, by art, with art. They say, when you come here, you're not a patient or a client, you're an artist preparing work for an exhibition. They put on an exhibition every year in the biggest gallery in Dundee, and the work they do is phenomenal. And many people told me their stories. One of the things that I really took away from it was that every year they do, to evaluate how well they're doing, they have a piece of paper with 2 outlines of a human body. They say, fill the first one to show how you felt before you came here. The second to show how you feel now you've been coming here for some time. I looked through a pile of these, it really, really moved me. This is one that really struck me, which firstly, for me, captures the work they do there. I mean, if that's the feedback you get from people who use your services, that's pretty awesome. Secondly, when I look at that, that's what it looks like when the human imagination, when our work of building an imagination infrastructure is successful. A healthy, active imagination, the ability of well-being, of wholeness, of integrity, of being in a good state in that way. And the third thing is that if we are to do what the climate scientists tell us we need to do over the next 10 years, which is to decarbonize society within 10 years, what would that feel like? What would it feel like to live through a revolution of the imagination, a time when anything felt possible? I think it would feel like this. This is kind of the picture that increasingly inspires the work I do. I touch back into this picture because this is what, you know, what this process could be like. And I'm kind of getting a bit short on time, so I'm going to leap forward a little bit, I think. I'm going to tell you about how I think one of the main things that we need to really master the art of is the ability to ask really good what if questions that start with what if. A good what if question includes in it the kind of sort of a taste of what's possible. This is very near to where I am here in Belgium, is a city called Liège. And in Liège, the transition group there came up with a what if question 8 years ago. They said, what if in a generation's time, the majority of food eaten in this city came from the land closest to this city? The project's called Ceinture Alimentaire, which literally means food belt. And they did a big event. They invited all the people who cared about food. I then went home. I went back 4.5 years later. In Liège now, they've started 27 co-op. They raised 5 million euros, not from the banks, from the people of the city, investing into that. They started a farm, 2 vineyards, a brewery, a shop, small producers, which did so well they now have opened 4. It's now the vehicle that's being used by the municipality in the city to reimagine how the hospitals, the schools, the universities procure their food. It's spreading out to other cities. There's now a food belt going to be happening in 3 or 4 other cities around the place. I met the mayor who said, we used to say we wanted to be a smart city. Now we want to be a transition city. Our role here is to remove all the obstacles to this becoming the story of the city. So when you get the what if question right at the beginning, because when I asked Christian, who runs this project, how did you do this? He said, we had a good narrative. We had a good story, and it's a story that kind of unlocked the imagination of the city. And for me, as somebody who's spent the last 10, 15, 400 years, depending on how you look at it, on a good day or a bad day, you know, working with transition and trying to inspire people with this sort of vision of how the future could be, to go to Liège, it exists. I'm sitting in it having my lunch. It employs people. That's where the food came from. It was really, really moving to be there and to see that. I'm going to just go ahead and just to finish on this because my time is running out, which is that I was recently invited by Patagonia, the clothing company, who I'm sure many of you know, who are often seen as one of the world's most sustainable companies. They give a lot of money to work with their team, because although they're very sustainable, they had reached the point of realizing that they were not acting in everything they did as kind of coasting a bit. So I went with their European team. We went up into the mountains. I did a 2-day workshop with them, getting them playing and trying to get their imaginations working. On the second day, we did an event we called the Walk of What If. We went out in group. I said, you're going to go out in groups of 6, try and think of as many what if questions as you can under that banner of what if in everything it did, Patagonia acted as if this was a climate and ecological emergency. Come up with as many ideas as you can. There's just 2 rules. The first rule is don't be constrained by what already exists in terms of, you know, your 5-year development plan or your budget or whatever. The second one, the most important one, is no one is allowed to say yes, but. When someone offers a what if question, no one can say yes, but. Say yes, reply with a yes and. So you build on each other's answers as you do in improv. They went out for a walk for about an hour. They came back with almost in an altered state of consciousness, with reams of what if questions. And I said, imagine that end of the room is really urgent. That end of the room is not quite so urgent. Arrange your what if questions along that continuum. By the end of the day, we had taken the most urgent ones and worked 6 of them up into things that could be implemented to organization. So I would love that everybody who looks at the transition movement, work that it does, recognizes that this is a yes and movement. The space that we try and hold in our communities is one where we support the asking of what if questions, and we meet them with a culture of yes and that's one of the ways I think that we're going to really start to be able to nurture a regenerative imagination infrastructure in the towns where we live and the cities where we live and work. I think that's all I have time for, but thank you so much for your attention, and I really wish this summit all the best, because you're doing phenomenal work. Thank you all so much.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. Hope you can get some rest before your morning train. As inspiring as ever.
Yes, I have to get up for 7 o'clock to get the train to France. So I will love you all and leave you all and have a wonderful summit. Thank you.
Great. So I think next, going to pass it on to our programs director, Jessica Alvarez-Parfrey, to briefly introduce short video that we made summit organizers earlier this week.
Thanks, Don. I just want to do a quick audio check. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Yeah, so we were able to gather together all of the amazing organizers for this summit experience. And we really wanted to sit with the question of what does regeneration mean to us? So this is the video, which the lovely Rua will be playing for us. And we're really excited to share it with you. And I'm also just buzzing with some energy right now. I don't know how folks are feeling just coming off of Rob's talk, Don speaking to us about why we're here, and Palm's beautiful prayers and energy at the top. So again, I hope you all enjoy this video.
It's time for trying something new. The moment demands this of us, and what we've been doing so far hasn't turned the tide. And we want to do it together, all of us. Regeneration is one of those key words that I like to carry around in my pocket, with a radical imagination, loving all of life, collaborating, creating. And it fits with a philosophy, a theory of change for me, which goes, connect the dots, learn to love, and act together. And to my dear friend Rua, I pass.
Thanks, John. And building on that, for me, regeneration is about renewal and restoration. It's about giving back instead of taking, and it takes creativity and love. Over to you, Jewel.
Regeneration to me is the natural flow of life-affirming, life-giving, and ever-renewing cycles of creation, of all our systems, of us. It's to inspire our minds and hearts towards regeneration. It means simply to return to what is inherent in all of nature and align us to what makes us truly happy, truly healthy, and deeply connected. Regeneration is how life is meant to be on all levels, and where we must now return to. Don, on to you.
Thanks, Joel. To me, regeneration evokes the idea that we can do a lot better than simply doing less bad. We can actually create a more vibrant, diverse, and beautiful world together. I don't believe we'll overcome the monumental challenges we're facing and build a better future by being small and scared people. We'll only do it by embracing a greatness of spirit, a spirit of compassion, connection, creativity, courage, and collaboration. Over to you, JC.
Thank you. To me, regeneration means that us humans recognize that we are part of nature, that we as humans are building a common language around responsibility rather than rights, the responsibility for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our neighbors, for the earth that gives us back life, and to create life in the soil that will continually regenerate the rest of the beings on the earth. Off to you, Galen.
Thanks, JC. For me, regeneration is first and foremost, is fundamentally about cultivating healthy, mutually beneficial relationships. It's about recognizing that we don't have to choose between this false choice of getting what we need from the environment and harming the environment, or not getting everything we need in order to thrive. It's about recognizing the interconnection of all of our systems, which is really more deeply about interbeing, that we are all connected with one another in a way that is deeply one system. All of our systems, our ecosystems, our cultural systems, we are all parts of one another. Regenerative systems are complex. They can't be built from pre-engineered designs. They must be grown and evolved collaboratively. I pass to you, Marissa.
Thank you, Galen. To me, regeneration means people taking action in our yards, our livelihoods, our neighborhoods, our public lands, to bring back wild and green spaces so they are once again plentiful enough to anchor our planet's climate. Regeneration sounds like birdsong and buzzing bees on tree-lined city streets. Regeneration smells like rain called down from the sky by the forests. It tastes like ripe fruit from the community orchard. Regeneration looks like green overtaking pavement, like art replacing advertising, like waving to the neighbor you never knew before. Over to you, Jess.
Thanks, Marissa. And for me, regeneration indicates the paradigm shift that we've all been seeking, something beyond the extractive. It means reclaiming and reimagining our creative capacities for care and for joy. Regeneration means healing and building a way forward for the next 7 generations. Ah, that made me very happy to see. And I hope you all enjoyed that. So our next activity, we're going to be tapping into our own imaginative capacities, like Rob was reminding us about. And we're also going to be looking to the wisdom of the earth, of the elements of creation. So we're going to be splitting folks up into different breakout rooms. And this is a chance to connect. This is an opportunity to get to know the folks who are also investing their time and energy in being part of the summit. I'm going to go ahead and put a prompt. This is a suggestion for your time spent together. And yeah, again, the elements, earth, air, water, fire, they have different meanings in different cultures. They mean different things to different people in different places. So really tap into what these elements are guiding you to recognize right now. Look into your own inner wisdom and share with your group. So that's going to be the idea for this space. I'm going to go ahead and put that prompt. And then I went ahead and put together some descriptive words that help me think about the different elements. But again, look to your own creative genius and the creative genius of your group.
I think it's up to me to give some shout outs of thanks. Am I right? Yeah. Well, Dee, this is a really hard part of this for me, this is my job is to thank people. The first thanking is to the organizers. We have worked together for a couple of years overall to bring this moment right here in these coming 2 weeks. And so the shout outs go to, I'll just say first names, Marissa and Dawn and Jewel and Galen and Jessica and Thea and Elvia and Kat and Karen and John. And what a great team we've been. We've worked well together. We've had a lot of heart. And I think we did some of what Rob talked about. What if? What if? We had dreams and we reached for the stars. So I give big thanks to all of you. And this couldn't have all happened if we didn't have partners and sponsors, organizations and businesses that helped us, that showed us, showed all about us to all their networks. The New Economy Coalition, Mass Energize, Gabriel's Garden, Jen Andriani, Active Peace, Heartwood Visuals, Eco Vista Community, Earth Haven Eco Village, Foundation for Intentional Community, NorCal Resilience Network, Possible Planet, Power Shift Network, Quaker Earth Care Witness, Shareable, Sociocracy for All, TELUS Institute, The Lexicon, U.S. Solidarity Economy Network, Work That Reconnects Network, Post Carbon Institute, Cooperation Humboldt, New Haven Bioregional Group, the Local Crowd Cooperative, Community Bikes, Transition Whatcom, Urban Permaculture Institute, the Joanna Macy Center for Resilience and Regeneration at Naropa University, Inner Resilience Network, Transition Network, Global Eco Village Network, North America, Global Eco Village Network, Bioneers, Films for the Planet, Tehran Collective, Transition Berkeley, and Water Spirit. A shout out to all of you. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you. And for all of you who are here today, thank you. I think it's over to Jewel.
All right. I have been given the task to, as part of the program team, to give you a preview of our program, of our summit. And in fact, in the spirit of Rob's talk, I'd like to just invite us to not see this as a summit so much as a virtual village, and carrying on with our imagination to imagine right now that this is, we're at the gateway of the village. We've all been welcoming you to enter this village that we've created for the next couple weeks. And imagine as you come into this village, there's different spaces. There's a main hall, there's a beautiful park and garden. There's sacred spaces all over. There's all kinds of little circles and homes and people walking around, your new friends, waving hello. So enter the village, and I'll try to do this in 8 minutes. So I might be going a little fast, but you can see everything on Mighty Networks as well as the website. I'm going to try to touch on all of it, actually. So here we go. As your tour guide to this village, tomorrow we're beginning with a grounding to just build our roots together for ourselves, our own inner resilience, and the movement. And after that, after you feel nice and grounded, you can go over to the main hall where you'll see our very first plenary, where we're featuring Daniel Christian Wall and Olivia Benson and Thaisa Matos, co-hosted by our own Jessica Parfrey and Elisa Miles. And then step outside after that and enjoy the garden in our social garden and share some space and meet others. The following day, we'll have another morning practice with the IRN members. And after that, as you feel nice and grounded, you can join the second plenary of the day. And these are at 1 p.m. Pacific time, by the way. I guess that's 4 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to speak in Pacific time. I know that's biased, but I am in Pacific time, so it's easier for me. I hope you don't mind translating. Anyway, that is going to be on just transition, which is just ways that transition needs to orient around justice issues. Very important conversation with Gopal Dayanini, excuse me if I said that wrong, Anna Rosa Rizzo Centino, David Cobb, and Michelle Vassell. And then again, it's followed by a social garden. The next day, after you've had a good night's rest, after all that wonderful, inspiring discussion, you can join an early morning cafe connection. And then after that, we have our first lunchtime hour session on municipalities and transition. And then Monday afternoon, we've got our first day of concurrent workshop sessions. We have 2 slots, 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. Pacific time. And these are concurrent workshops, but don't worry, they'll all be recorded. The first session at 2 p.m. is Inflamed, Deep Medicine and the Anatomy of Injustice. And the other one at 2 p.m. is Repair Cafe. And then at 5 p.m. Pacific time, we have Growing the Capacity of Your Local Group and a video screening and discussion of Dancing with the Cannibal Giant. That's the second workshop. And Deep Adaptation Forum. After another good night's sleep, wake up Tuesday to a morning practice and then have the day off and evening come together for the first of our evening film programs with a discussion with Tom Llewellyn on his film, The Response with Thea LeGrau. And next day, Wednesday, we're going to learn how to recover from burnout because we all need that from time to time. And then join us for a lunchtime at 11 a.m. Pacific time. All the lunch times are 11 a.m. Pacific time, and learn about the Inner Resilience Network. Hope you'll come to that one. And then later, that is our second day of workshops, Wednesday afternoon. Concurrent workshop slots are all 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. The first 2 p.m. one will have One Word Solomon, where we'll see Palm, who is featured in that, and a discussion. And then the second workshop slot at 5 p.m. we have Local Food Systems and another workshop concurrent on war and its effect on the climate crisis, a really important subject. All right, and the next day, which is Thursday, wake up to your morning practice, and then that's about trauma healing, really important how we do that in community. The lunch hour that day is hosted by our own Politics and Policy National Group, hosting a daring conversation about our political perspectives. And the evening will convene a council building bridges on ways we can better work together. So yay for that. And then Friday, the next day, we will, after our morning session on empathic listening, our lunch hour will be with Woody Tesh, founder of Slow Money. And the evening is very exciting, inspiring gathering of artists who are also activists and sharing some taste of their art. So you'll see a gathering of really inspiring and wonderful people with different kinds of art expressions. And so you can look at all the names there. I'm going to keep moving on in the interest of time to the next day in Saturday morning. We have in the morning, you can learn about conflict transformation and compassion. We all can use that, more of that in our world, I'm sure. And the following, walk on over to the main hall and see the plenary panel with Emily Quano, Lila June Johnston, Richard Heinberg, moderated by Vicki Robin, about transforming our economic and political systems. And then of course we have that social garden afterwards. The next day, Sunday, join the Sacred Space in the morning with Ikala Lewis on a mindfulness practice, and then head on over to the plenary panel at 1 p.m. Pacific time, and culminating in all that we know that is broken, hurting, and scary, and find ways to meet and transform towards a better world in crisis as catalyst for transformation. And that talk features Tom Llewellyn again, Elaine Miller-Carras, and Rupa Marya. And I'll be moderating that panel. So, and then of course we have the social garden, and then we have the next week, the Monday after our morning practice. You can join us for the 2 time slots again. Monday, all workshops are Mondays and Wednesdays, 2 p.m. Pacific and 5 p.m. Pacific. We have on that Monday, we've got climate change, disaster, and mental health at 2 p.m. Pacific, and scaling up grassroots action. And then at 5 p.m. we have climate justice is social justice and the ABCs of local investing. Tuesday, a wonderful healing dialogue practice in the morning, and Tuesday evening is the second part of our film program. This time a wonderful panel discussing the film Gather, an Indigenous food sovereignty and localizing food in general. Wednesday after the morning practice, all morning practices are 8 a.m. Pacific time, by the way. Come for lunch to learn about the stories to action work that 2S has been doing. Then our last day of concurrent workshops begins at the same time with 2 p.m. For ego restoration. And the other workshop is for catalyzing local economic transformation, both at 2 p.m. on that Wednesday, and at 5 p.m. we've got a workshop on indigenizing and decolonizing our work in ourselves. So after that, the Thursday morning session, join us for lunch for the Collaborative Design Council, National Hubs, and more. And then another council evening discussing intergenerational solidarity. Finally, we get to our last weekend, Friday, the last Friday, where we are hosting a very special ceremony honoring Joanna Macy and all that she has given and brought to our movement, giving her a Transition Ally Award. And we're going to be sharing about ways we can go forward with inspired action, catalyzing us and lifting up all our good work. So I know that was quick preview. I try to be a thorough tour guide, but now I'm going to hand it over to Marissa to tell us about the last 2 days that weekend.
That was awesome, Jewel. Thank you so much for sharing that energy that you brought to our whole process of developing the program for this event, which we're very proud of. Thank you to our whole programming team. And thank you to everyone who's feeling this call to design and build regenerative culture and for being here tonight. Just adding to what Jewel shared, so that Friday night catalyzing and call to action ceremony, we're going to be also sharing with you our Regeneration Nation campaign and our Regeneration Core project, which we're very excited about. So I want to just plant the seed. Please come and learn about those important pieces of work for the next 3 years for Transition US. And then Saturday, October 9th, there will be an open space on regenerative action where you're all welcome to bring your own discussion topic, host a discussion, or just show up as a participant to join other discussions. And we're asking that you propose a topic for the open space session on Mighty Networks in advance of the open space. So if you have questions on how to do that, you can ask via Mighty Networks, but you just go to the open space portion of our Mighty Networks platform and you can propose your topic there. And then the final day of the summit, Sunday, October 10th, we are hosting a session on bioregionalism and regional organizing. There's going to be a panel as well as a lot of time for interactive breakout groups, meeting with folks from your region or bioregion to think strategically together about how to advance regional collaboration. And again, we're asking you to get the ball rolling on that in Mighty Networks. We have a regional organizing space there where you can request a specific space for your region, whatever you think of your region as, and we have some suggested regions, but we're also very open to seeing what emerges from the participants. So with that, we're going to move into closing, and I'm very excited to share with you some spoken word that was shared with us by Naima Penniman from Soulfire Farm. How many of y'all are familiar with Soulfire Farm? They are they're in Grafton, New York. They are doing amazing work to build food sovereignty and end racial injustice in the food system. And we invited both Naima and her sister Leah Penniman, who's the author of Farming While Black, to join us for the summit. And it's harvest season, they're very busy, so they couldn't be here live, but they offered up this incredible video of Naima's spoken word piece, These Gardens Are Blueprints.
Where soil and atmosphere meet, be a portal to presence, a terrain of remembrance, a vote for survival in an unpromised future. These gardens are blueprints of interdependent destiny, intergenerational memory, saving seeds for food as remedy. See, my people know what it's like to eat and still be starving. So we turn it hardship into harvest, lawns and schoolyards into gardens, homegrown bounty in our palms. We come from soil and stardust, and so we conjure. Giving props to the magicians who grow provisions for our kitchens. We smuggle spinach into prisons, transform the places that we live in. Trade psychosis for symbiosis and stay focused. We sprout sunflowers that tower on neighborhood blocks, harvest raindrops on rooftops that water our crops, propagate plant medicine for the metropolis, guarding our plots, because our gardens are not for profit or loss. Cross-pollinate the promise, fam. We got this. Take a deep breath. Restore calmness. With lemon balm bounty in our palms, hot peppers in our pockets, black-eyed peas spiraling up Lenape blue corn stalks with buttercup squash carpets, three sisters symbiotic, talking stories of solidarity on native territory. Migratory monarchs transcend borders, morning glories ascend fences. Pay attention to the lessons Mother Nature keeps expressing, how to multiply our blessings. For justice and sustenance amid glaring disparity, every seed saved will set us free. In an age of opulence and scarcity, every seed saved will set us free. In a time of intensifying violence and climate calamity, every seed saved will set us free. Hold on tight to the source. We have all that we need.
That was so beautiful. So I'm going to say good night. I'm going to end with some words from Leah Penniman, but I want to wish you all a good night. Sleep well. Be ready for tomorrow. Thank you for being here. You know, it's a terrible thing to throw a party and not have people show up, and you showed up. That's terrific. So I'm just going to end with these words, and that will be it. We'll all just leave one another. We know there's no going back to normal. The path forward demands that we take our rightful places as the younger siblings in creation, deferring to the oceans, forests, and mountains as our teachers.
Maybe we can all unmute and say goodbye in a big, glorious
Thank you very
cacophony.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.
Night, and thank you. Good night.
Gratitude.
Namaste.
Thanks, Rua. Yes.
Everybody.
Tomorrow.
Night,
Tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Shalom, shalom.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.